Welcome to the Here We Go podcast, a place to share your experiences in football programs that players have loved regardless of record or on-the-field accolades. I'm Tom Letson with my co-host, Greg LaCava. Coach LaCava, how you doing today for today's episode? What is this, 5? I
believe it's 5
of the Here We Go podcast. How are you, man?
Good morning, Coach. How's it going? Excited for today. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, this is the first episode where we have an outsider on. You know what I mean? So
quote unquote,
outside. We have a guest today, Mr. Chuck Welsh, a very close friend of mine that I've known for many years now. And I just have a little blurb here that I want to read about Coach to kick this off. All right. Chuck Welsh is the former head coach at Freehold Township High School from the 1986 season to 1994. He's also a former assistant coach at Freehold Borough for many years, where he started his coaching career. And he ended up there being the defensive coordinator on their 10-1 team that went to the state final when they had Joe the Jet Henderson. Many people from the Shore area will remember Joe the Jet. I saw him play in person. I saw that team play against Shore Regional, where he had 300 yards, Coach Welsh. And he was an amazing talent. Coach also coached an NFLer that had a pretty good career, Scott Conover. He's also a longtime social studies teacher and social studies supervisor in the Freehold Regional High School District. He finished his teaching career at Howell Public Schools, initially as a vice principal, where I met him. Okay, and that's where we developed a close friendship. That's where our friendship began. And he retired from his principal's job at the Howell Memorial Middle School. Okay, so we are really happy to welcome Coach Welsh today. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Feeling good. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking to get into it. And what I want to do here is share my screen for our audience. Okay, I want to show a couple of pictures. Okay.
Coach Letson went digging. He went digging.
Well, I asked Coach for some pictures and he sent some. And so I just wanted to explain these here. Okay, this is a good looking guy here on the screen here. We got Coach Welsh over, looks like he's probably standing here for the Star Spangled Banner at the start of the game as the head coach of the Freehold Township High School. And also he is pictured with his close coaching friend of many years. This is from Freehold Borough with Stan Parker, Coach Parker. Okay, very close friend of his, and they enjoyed a lot of great times together. And then in the center picture is Chuck Welsh, is where he's graduating from the Marines. And something very special that I wanted to mention, and Chuck might get into this a little bit. Chuck graduated. He was nominated as the most outstanding Marine of your platoon, right, Coach? Platoon?
That's correct.
Right, wow. Which is a big deal. Out of 80 recruits, he was recognized as the most outstanding Marine. And Chuck's been through many things in his life and has a lot of accolades. And, I think this one is really, really special, means a lot to him. And maybe he can get into that a little bit about what it meant, him moving forward and being a leader, and the type of football coach that he was. Okay, so I'm going to, Coach, you want to comment on any of these pictures before I unshare the screen?
I think it's it's kind of interesting, the picture from the Marine Corps, because as you were talking, I was thinking that kind of was that Marine Corps experience was successful on the back end because of the Milton Hershey School, and it helped me be more successful on the front end because of what I learned there.
Right.
It's a Paris Island boot camp is probably one of the most rigorous things, maybe second to SEAL training, that a young man and young woman can go through. And it was, to learn how you could do hard things that you never imagined you'd be doing. And that includes, the training and the experience, in Vietnam, all that. And to take lessons from that and find out a little bit about yourself that you might not otherwise have known really kind of gives you a sense of kind of calmness and confidence that can carry you well in almost any career.
Yeah, just for the audience, for their information, which we'll get to too. Chuck was drafted, into the Marines, and after he graduated, he was deployed, and he was wounded in Vietnam, and also obviously his Vietnam experiences played a great role and impacted his life moving forward. But as Coach mentioned, the Milton Hershey School. Okay, I'm going to unshare my screen here, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, because and how I came about to know that about Chuck. So Chuck came to work I was working at Howell for the Howell Township K-8 school district. I was hired there in December 1998, and the following year, Chuck came on as a vice principal at Howell Middle School North, where I happened to be working. And although I'd never met Chuck formally, informally, we coached against him when I was at Middletown South High School. Okay, and so and so of course I went down, to spend a little bit more time and introduce myself to his office. So I went in and we started talking, and I noticed up on the wall, there was a black and white picture up on the wall of one gentleman on steps, and it was an old picture, it looked like from early 1900s. And there were about 10, 12 boys around him on these steps gathered around him. And, and I looked at it and it seemed different to me. And I said, I always ask these questions. I go, Chuck, I said, does that picture have any significance? And he says, it sure does. He says, do you have a minute? Sit down. And so Chuck went on to tell me, that he grew up in the Milton Hershey School for boys from the age of 4 until he graduated their school, as a senior at 18 years old.
I was only 17, but that's not.
He was only 17.
Well, that's an important part of the story, actually.
Okay, great. And, and so, I went on to learn many things over the years about Chuck's experience at Milton Hershey and how it's both through the negative and positive experiences that he had there came to mold the person that he was going to be. And actually, as he mentioned, and he shared with me, probably gave him an edge in the Marine Corps when he went in to boot camp and then into the war. But that was a very significant thing for me. Chuck, would you mention a little bit about your time there? Like, how did that come about? As a 4-year-old that
sure,
moved into the Milton Hershey School.
Yeah, Milton Hershey School was established by the Hershey chocolate magnate Milton Hershey, and he and his wife Kitty couldn't have children, and he always wanted to have kids, so he established the school and left his entire fortune to the trust for that school, which still operates the institution today, to the tune of about, I'm going to guess now, it's probably about $20 billion. So every time you buy a Hershey bar, 51% of the profits are going to go to the support of these kids. Now, it's a little different today, and I'm not going to get into that because we have a lot to get to. But when I was enrolled, there were several requirements. Now, this was a free school. You didn't have to pay a dime. Everything you needed was taken care of. Clothing, food, obviously, housing, an incredible educational environment that I could talk about briefly because of our interest in education. So you had to have had one parent pass away. The parent or whoever was your caregiver after that had to qualify by having an income under the poverty line. So I was born just after, I'm a baby boomer, right? Just after World War II. And that's why we're called the baby boom generation. There was a baby boom. And as a result of the fact that the war was just fought, there were a lot of orphans or kids who had lost their fathers. In my case, my dad died of natural cause. Well, natural causes, he was 49, but he had some issues with his heart. And I think that was the only thing. So it was a free school, although there was an emotional cost, because being 4.5 years old, I remember my mom telling me things about where I was going to go. And I wasn't sure why, but the way she described it to me sounded like the way I was living then, even though we didn't really have much to eat. Like if we had macaroni and cheese, it was a big day, I'm serious, bread and butter sandwiches, that kind of thing. So she took me up there and dropped me off. This is in 1953. And I still remember we were seated in to me, it was a big room. There were like 6 dining room tables in there, about 25 boys, ages from kindergarten to 5th grade. And it came on me suddenly that, hey, she's leaving. I didn't have, I couldn't put it together. And I remember sitting there bawling like a little baby, like, oh man, it was hard. And the elementary years were tough because, we had house parents that probably today wouldn't be considered qualified for residential child care. There's no doubt in my mind. As a matter of fact, they inflicted punishments upon us that would get them arrested today.
I'm sure.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. But once I made it up into like junior high school, we went to an intermediate unit. And then when I was in 9th grade, we went to a dairy farm, which I loved. I loved dunging out and, milking the cows and all that. You started out as a groomer, you kept them clean, and then you'd work your way up to milker, And I really did enjoy that. And I was so comfortable in the school then that I barely wanted to go home on the few vacations they gave us. I have a core of friends that I'm still in contact with, a couple of them whom I played football with. So the thing about that school is everything was regimented. You were expected to carry your weight. Like if you were a barn guy, you went and took care of the cows. And if you were a house guy, you had to dust and vacuum and, clean. I was a cook for breakfast when I was there in the house. Our evening meals were brought out to us on a meal truck in big insulated kettles. And we had our lunch at school as a family lunch. The whole school would eat together in this big cafeteria, which was kind of cool. So I mentioned the educational environment there. When I was in elementary school, I saw school as a safe place compared to what was going on in the unit, in the home. And I tell this to teachers. I used to tell this to teachers as a way of trying to motivate them. I was in an environment where I never heard a teacher say a harsh word to a student or physically punish them or mistreat them in any way emotionally, teasing them or not. In fact, the only hug I ever got from an adult in Milton Hershey School came from my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Bacher. I had been in the hospital for reasons I don't understand, maybe measles, I don't know, whatever it was. And when I came back, I was probably out of school about 4 days. She just gave me a big hug when I walked in the classroom. And it was so unusual to me, but I never forgot it.
But, I mean, what a unbelievable experience. And initially when you hear of a kid, living residentially from 4 to 17 till they graduate high school, you just, at least me, you just think that, wow, that was just had to be such a negative experience. Yeah. And obviously there were negative parts, and you talk about that, quite liberally, but overall you do see, the positives that came out of that for you. And
let me just make another point too, especially for people viewing us. The school today is not what it was then.
Yeah.
Today it's kind of like, a prep school for poor kids, because you have all the benefits of that money and the clothing and the food and the educational facilities themselves, which were incredible. And they also have expanded enrollment so that any child that's not getting adequate care can basically qualify for admission. And now there's about, I think the last count, there were 2,200 students. They also opened admission for girls too, which was a smart move because parents today, as you guys probably know, they're never giving up their kid. There's no way that they're going to, do that to their kids. I mean, for the most part. So
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, I probably never would have gotten a college education had it not been for Milton Hershey, because one of the benefits of the school was that if you maintained basically a B+ average, they would pay for your college. Now they could dictate where you went, which they did in my case, but nonetheless, I got a great education, out of being in that school.
So Chuck, very unique experience as well as playing on the football team for Milton Hershey, and could you tell us what were the years, that you did play on the team? And can you describe your coaching, the coaches, and,
Sure.
and a little bit about, at that time, what you knew, what you guys were playing, and how did your coaches coach you?
Our coaches, well, first of all, to answer your first question, I graduated in '66, so the season of '65 was my senior year.
Okay.
Now, at Milton Hershey, football was the only fall sport. No soccer, no cross country, no tennis, none of that. It was football. So football was basically, talk about building a culture, was an important part of the culture of the school. I mean, there were cheers and songs that people sang. It was a whole totally different environment today where kids basically go to socialize or, have fun. It was great. And I remember sitting on a seesaw when I was in about 4th grade with my friend Bill Vessa, and we had just watched Milton Hershey beat Hershey High in the annual Cocoa Bean game. And
that's great.
We actually said to each other, we're going to play someday. We're going to play someday. The problem is, you fast twitch muscle guys probably wouldn't have had an issue with it, but like us big slow guys, it was competitive to get on the team even. I mean, we probably carried about 60 guys, but they still had to make cuts.
Oh, wow. They had cuts.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, it was a great program with regard to what they had made available to you. Playing in Hershey Stadium, that was our home field. 10,000 people at the Milton Hershey High game. We played against the public school. We homecoming, we get like 8,000 people. It was incredible. And you were treated nicely. The program was set up so that if we had a Saturday game, most of our home games were on Saturday afternoon, like here at the Shore. And we would have a team meal down at the administrative area of the school called the Main. They had a big dining room there, and they would bus us down there, and we'd have a team meal, steak and eggs, in the morning. And then they would take us back up to the school. If we had a Friday night game, we didn't go back to the unit after school. We stayed, did walkthroughs, and then we had, a team meal up in the cafeteria. I didn't make the team as a freshman. I didn't make the team as a sophomore. I made the team as a junior, and I didn't see the field till I was a senior. But that's the way it was there.
Yeah.
We had a huge number of kids playing. Our coach really wanted it. I think you guys mentioned this in one of your podcasts about the value of an 18-year-old senior. And we didn't have any 18-year-old seniors, probably because technically you were supposed to leave the school when you were 18. You had to get a waiver to stay in. But I just don't remember anybody being 18. But when you got into the thing, they told you right away, the coaches told you right away, we're a 2-platoon system, which was kind of cool because everybody got a chance to play. But you're not going to see the field unless you're some superstar athlete. You're not going to see the field until you're in 12th grade. So I had invested all of my dreams about being a football player into basically this 1 year, and it was fantastic. You play in that stadium, you come out underneath the tunnel, and the band's playing and all. It was great. The coaches were basically, they would install schemes, but they never broke anything down to teach you the fundamentals of executing that scheme. Okay, so I was a D lineman in a 5-3. I played left defensive tackle, so I'm basically playing a 5 technique. But we did multiple stunts. There wasn't a play that we didn't stunt on, either slanting or we actually were running zone blitzes. I don't think the coaches knew what they were doing too much, but where I would actually have to cover the flat, which was a kind of cool story because in our homecoming game that year, I went out, I'm covering the flat, and our safety, he was a 6'6" kid. He got I think he went to the University of Delaware on a free ride. Anyway, he intercepted the pass, and I was kind of like his escort down the field. Took out the last guy. It was great. It was great. But
that's great.
I didn't realize how much they didn't teach until I became a coach myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And remember the hours we would sweat over the most minute detail. I remember having a discussion with our line coach, Larry Boyce, about how we were going to beat the trap, right? And Larry said, well, yeah, but if he does that, he's going to give up his gap. I said, no, he's taking his gap with him. We got to blow up the play. We got to spill this. We don't want to give that guy that, because when I was there, they said, well, if you feel like the guy disappears in front of you, just fall down on your hands and knees, that was the extent of technique coaching.
Right.
So that was a little bit frustrating. But I do think, I think from the standpoint of what we were trying to do with our defense, I kind of had a good feel for that. In fact, to be honest, I don't mean to brag about it, but I think I should have been the one calling the signals because we had a middle linebacker, great kid, good player, who would call the signals. And we were playing this Bishop McDevitt, which is a big school in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's where, what's his name went? Shady McCoy went there.
Oh.
And they've had a lot of good guys come out of there and go into the NFL. But we're playing them, and they had this big fullback kid named Phil Scrignoli. And they were running just dive. So he kept, our jam call was the two tackles coming down into B gap. Basically crossing the face and coming down into B gap, which he felt, I think, gave him protection, but in reality, it allowed the tackle to just come down and crush him.
Yeah.
So I remember coming off the field when the offense went on and they put me on the phone with the guy upstairs, which, they never did that. But anyway, wow. So, what's going on out there? I guess he figured I knew kind of like what we were doing. I said, well, Steve keeps calling jam and they keep, coming down and cracking down on him. So, anyway, we lost 13-6.
And a coach was born.
Yeah.
And a coach was born right there.
So Coach Welsh, they put you on the headphones as a player?
As a player, yeah.
Wow. Back, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It wasn't really headphones, it was an actual telephone.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
I think I said goodbye too.
Yeah. Proper manners.
That's great. Oh,
that's great.
Goodness.
So I played every snap my senior year. Every single snap. And I think I might have been the only one that did that. What took a toll on us, our second game of the year, we played this John Harris High School in Harrisburg, which we never should have been playing. That would be the equivalent of like Keensburg playing Bergen Catholic.
Yeah.
It was our headmaster at the school at that time went to Harris, so he wanted to play them.
Of course, right.
Well, they beat the hell out of us. It was 36-2. I did have a blocked extra point in that game, though. Of course, there were so many opportunities to do it. But they had three kids on that team that, well, two of them played in the NFL. A kid named Jimmy Jones, he was a quarterback at UCLA, and he played pro football for a while. And Jan White, the receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know if you remember that name.
Yes, I do.
He's probably in the Hall of Fame. But he was on that team, too, and they must have had 75 guys. And it was the 95-degree day, and our guys were dropping like crazy. Hey, heaven forbid you drink water before the game.
Yeah,
we didn't even get water at practice.
That's funny you mentioned that because I wanted to ask you about the middle 60s back there during football practice. Like, what were your practices like? Were they were they abusive? Were there things that you could never do today?
Yes. So all that.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Our defensive back coach, who RIP, Fred Poorman, who was one teacher and coach that really, really influenced me. And took like kind of care of me a little bit, asked me things and Anyway, he used to teach his defensive backs put their hands behind their back and run into each other. Now, I don't know why. I don't really understand that. But from the standpoint of defensive fundamentals, the only thing I ever remember doing is like how you might set up a run drill where you'd have an offensive line against a defensive line, something like that. But all we did was go over all the calls, slant left, slant right, tackle in, whatever that outside blitz was, so but I think the same was true probably throughout coaching at that time. Yeah, I don't think it was like it is today, where we really get down into every detail of telling kids how to block by, with their steps and this and that. They never did it. Just drive them out. That
and that's the part that you're right. They don't teach you how to do things. They tell you what you need to do, but don't teach you how to do it.
And then mock you when you don't do it right.
Exactly. And Coach, if you saw Coach Bova, he made mention of that, where you're as a coach, you're first and foremost a teacher.
Right.
And in order to get kids to do what you need them to do, some kids you have to explain it down to the smallest of detail.
Yeah.
And I think even today that happens with some coaches. They don't truly really get down into the details. And I think that's where coaches like us thrived, because we knew how important it was for those fundamentals to get coached. And just a little story. I can remember every year as a head coach, we always started from square one. And I can remember players saying, "Coach, why are we doing this?" I'm like, "Because we have kids that never played before.
Right.
And we're going to do this so you're going to learn the fundamentals every year you're here, no matter how long you stay on the team." And I think that's important, to make sure you're teaching and coaching to not the lowest, but the youngest of your players, that they're just starting out. You have to do that every year.
I love that, Greg. And I'll be honest with you, when you struggle to get victories, and you guys probably understand this, practice becomes even more important.
Absolutely.
To be honest, there were many times when I would reflect back and say, I kind of enjoyed practice more than the games.
Yeah.
Because you really could feel, and I would kind of approach my kids that way too. You're a winner if you show up every day.
Right.
Don't worry about the scoreboard. You show up every day and you maximize what you can give to the team, and you're okay.
Well, I think that's where we share our common thing here, is because you're right. I agree with you. As a head coach, going into a game when you're just like, we have no chance, no matter what we do. So your focus gets really put on practice, because you can control that. You control the outcomes in practice. But once you get into that game, I can remember so many times, and please share if you felt the same way as a head coach or an assistant coach, and Tommy knows this, we're just like, we're going to get killed today. Like we have no chance, no matter how well prepared you are. You had no chance.
I remember Neptune coming down to Freehold Township to play us, and Coach Boyce and I were kind of like you guys are with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had a bond, and we talked a lot of football and did a lot of things and had similar philosophies. And he had a real kind of issue with his voice because of an accident that he had when he was at Trenton State, and he talked like, sometimes the more excited he got, the more shrill his voice was. And he says, "Coach, I got a bad feeling about this."
Yeah.
Me too. So I think Amabile was coaching Neptune then.
So that must have been Coach Boyce's signature statement, because "here we go" was mine.
That's right. Yeah. There you go. Right.
You just know.
There you go.
You just know, you have this feeling as soon as that ball's kicked off, you're just like, "Oh, here we go."
Yeah.
So during the game, we had an accidental sleeper play in terms of the messengers going back and forth, and this kid Richie Johnson is going to take the play in, and no, he was coming off the field. I can't remember how he did this, but he was supposed to go on the field. And I signaled a play into the quarterback, and he started to go. He said, "Should I go, coach?" He never played football before, but he said, "Should I go, coach?" I said, "No, just wait right there." So he's a yard in on the field.
No way.
Nobody saw him, but our quarterback, scanned the field, saw him, and
holy mackerel.
Well,
by accident. It happens by accident.
But I remember their coaches going off about it. They thought oh yeah, damn you. It was the only touchdown we scored.
Coach Amberville must have had a coronary over there on the sideline.
Oh man, everybody's like, "Oh, that was a great play you guys ran." Okay.
Yeah, right. That's funny.
So you graduate from Milton Hershey, Chuck, and you go into community college, right? Before you get drafted.
Junior college in Philadelphia.
Right. And you end up getting drafted, and we had mentioned, you graduated as the most outstanding Marine in your platoon, And then you went on, was it 1 or 2 tours in Vietnam?
Oh, geez, half of one.
Half a tour.
Because I got wounded.
Because you got wounded. Okay. And you know, and then when you came back, you tell us how your career took a direction at that point.
Sure. Well, you know, I was drafted. Most of the guys who went to get inducted that day were going in the Army. And this was early December, right? So when I got my draft notice, it said that you'll be sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, processed in, and then sent home for holiday leave. There was fine print. If you're drafted into the Marine Corps, none of the above applies.
Oh my God.
I didn't anticipate that I would be one of the ones, because I wasn't going to volunteer for that. I knew, ironically enough, when I was in 6th and 7th grade, I was obsessed with the Marine Corps. I used to go down to the library and read Leatherneck magazine, all that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's karma coming back to me. I don't know. But anyway, it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. And I say that simply because everything that I learned as a child and every understanding I had of routine and accountability and regimentation was already in my head. I knew what it was like to be away from home.
Yeah.
I wasn't homesick. And there were guys crying at night and throwing up, and, you know, after morning chow, and, you know, and I seemed to kind of, I mean, I wasn't comfortable, but I seemed to find a little niche where the DIs began to see me as a leader, and eventually made me the platoon guide, which in a marching formation is the guide on as the flag, and everybody kind of marches as that as a reference point. Mm-hmm. And it's this most significant, important recruit leadership role. So that was really, really an integral part of my development as a leader, because I didn't get it when I was in the home. I was just an average guy. You know, I played football. I was pretty good. I wasn't a star. I wasn't a captain. You know, I went out and I did my thing, got a couple Player of the Week awards, you know, but nothing like, nobody would look at me and say, oh, that guy's going places, you know? Mm-hmm. So there, in the Marine Corps, it was the opposite. The first thing the senior DI said to us when he got us together in our barracks, how many of you guys played high school football?
No kidding.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
About 12 guys raised their hand. And from that pool of 12 guys, they picked all their initial leaders. And then they began to fire them one by one when they did one thing wrong. Yeah. So I survived that and was elevated from a squad leader to the platoon guide. And I kept that position the rest of the time I was there, which is why I won that award, basically. I mean, wow. I wasn't the best on the rifle range, but I was good enough. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the best at the PT stuff, but I was good enough. I did excel in the classroom, because I'm telling you, a lot of the guys that got drafted with me were just freaking dumb. I mean, really, really dumb.
Right.
And I don't say that disparage them, because some of those dumb guys could shoot a squirrel between the eyes from 200 yards. You know, they were good out in the bush, you know, but you couldn't have a conversation with them.
Right.
But I was a machine gunner. So the tough part about that was that when everyone else was finding cover from which they could fire their weapon, I was running up to the front, guns up, you know, to try to lay down a field of fire. It was very dangerous, because as soon as you open up with a little burst, you know, they're
see you,
going to find you. And,
yeah.
Yeah, this is where being the biggest guy comes to haunt you. Every time we like being the big guy. A lot of times, man, that's a great thing. But here, you had to carry the heaviest gun.
Yeah. But anyway, once again, there wasn't so much leadership that I learned, but I learned about the importance of being dependent upon. You know, that people expected you to do your job, and whether you wanted to do it or not, or whether you knew what the dangers were. You know, you had to do it.
Yeah.
And that was an important part of, who I became as a man.
Sometimes I think, and I know for myself as a coach and as a teacher, you sometimes you gravitate more towards the people that have those intangible things. And I think, Coach, you're speaking about what your platoon leaders or the people in charge, they saw in you were intangible things.
Yeah.
You know?
I think so. Yeah. But it, obviously I carried that with me. You know, when I get home. So anyway, when I get home, this associate degree in business management, I went to what do you call it, an employment agency. And they hooked me up with this job right in Center City in Philly, right by Independence Hall, as a matter of fact. My job was basically to investigate people who had applied for insurance to make sure everything was copacetic with what they put on the application, which I hated the job. I hated it because I realized at that time that I was an empathetic individual.
Right.
You know, and I think that empathy came from the way I was raised. And one day I remember watching, I was laying on my couch in my mom's house and I was watching Monday Night Football and just, you know, going through things in my mind. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to become a teacher. Now, don't ask me what thought process contributed to that conclusion, because I can't remember. But the next day I went to Westchester State College. It was a couple weeks. It was right around time when the first semester ended. So I wanted to get in for the spring semester. And I went to the admissions office and they told me, as a veteran, we'll make sure you get it. You missed all the deadlines. We're going to make sure you get in, you know, which maybe people have a kind of biased idea about how veterans were actually treated. Or how they think they were treated. Maybe some guys went through some stuff where, are you allowed to curse on this?
Yes.
Oh.
Be you, coach. Be you.
So, you know, you hear stories about guys getting spit on and all that stuff. You know, I never occurred to me. I mean, I felt like I was always treated well, except by the VA to a certain extent.
It's amazing.
So I go back to school and then, you know, Debbie and I got married in 72. I didn't graduate till 74, but when I was at Westchester, my college was being paid. Now the Pierce got paid by Milton Hershey. My college at Westchester got paid by the government. I was on the GI Bill. Amazing. So I have no complaints.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. First mortgage I got was a GI mortgage. You know?
That's incredible. And it should be that way. Our veterans should be taken care of. That's funny because all three of us didn't start out in this career path.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. So I about the time I was going to graduate, I had to get a job. You know, my wife had a pretty good job. We were actually doing pretty well then because just the two of us, and you know, we had some money coming in. But I had to find a job, and Debbie was behind me all the way. I mean, she, you know, gave up her job as a flight attendant to get married. And then she gave up her job as a secretary to the president of a publishing company to move to Freehold area so that I could get a teaching job.
Wow. So
one quick story though, I went to a job fair and the guy that was interviewing me was a superintendent of schools from up in northeastern Pennsylvania, a town called, I forget the name of it, Clark Summit. And all he wanted to talk about was Marine Corps because he was a retired officer. So, he says, "Oh, were you in LZ Ross?" Yeah, I was there. He said, "Man, that place used to get hit during the daytime." But he offered me a job.
Yeah, and
didn't ask a single question about, you know, anything educational. He offered me a job. So I go up there to interview with whoever else I had to interview with, and was, you know, they made an offer to me. Right now, this is at the northern end of the northeast extension of the Turnpike. It's in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area, so that's coal country. You know, it's the kind of area where on the opening of hunting season, the kids get off school.
Right.
You know, I was going to be the coach of the rifle team.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
That's wild.
So one day, Debbie and I took a trip up there. I wanted to show her around this and that. And in the meantime, I had a thing cooking on the Freehold regional stove. You know, I got a possibility there. So we go up there. It was a muddy day. The snow had just melted. You know, it was terrible. And she goes, "Chuck, I can't live here." She says, "I think you need to go home and call Freehold Regional and find out what's going on with your."
And there you go.
Yeah. So I did, and I ended up getting a job at Freehold, and my first assignment was at Freehold Borough. Now, as far as coaching goes, I wanted to coach football, but I didn't know it would happen right away. So we had the convocation that they have, everybody goes, and then you go back to your school, and I met everybody, and the AD grabs me and said, "You know, you know how, did you play football? I said, yeah, I play football. He said, well, we're going to make you an assistant coach. I said, so I ended up being the assistant freshman football coach. You know, all I knew of was my experience. First year. Yeah. And I had 5 freshman social studies classes.
Wow.
With no syllabus, no materials, basically. And I had 5 different classrooms.
Wow.
So at the time, Debbie and I didn't have a place up in the county area. We were living with her parents down in Cherry Hill. So that's
the ride.
A ride.
Absolutely.
And Freehold, had to be at school at 7:15. So how am I going to manage the teaching part of it and the coaching part of it and, be good at any of it? So I almost quit.
Wow.
I almost quit. I was sitting at a stoplight on Route 79 and Route 9.
Like a song.
On my way back to Cherry Hill, probably 7 o'clock at night. And I said, I can't do this. I got to quit the football. I can't manage a classroom and deal with it. It was falling apart on me.
Right.
So I went home and I talked to my father-in-law about it. He was a great man. He unfortunately passed away in 1975 of a heart attack, but he was an Air Force veteran, Purple Heart awardee, got shot down in the Pacific. Great guy. And I told him, John, I said, I can't do all this. And he said, yes, you can. Just grind it out.
Yeah.
Just grind it out.
Yeah.
Good things will happen. So
and they did.
A moment for me.
Wow.
And I got my stuff together and, managed to get through it somehow. First 2-3 years of teaching, I feel bad for the kids I had. I don't know, what kind of job I was doing, but, it got better, obviously, as we went along. The problem is I had nothing behind me that would say these guys are any better than my high school coaches. I mean, I didn't.
You didn't know. There's no comparison
because the guy that was the head coach at the time was not a real organized guy, and he was a first-year head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So the second year I coached with my friend Wayne McChesney, you guys probably know.
Yeah, I know.
We had the freshman program, and by that time I had a chance to do a little research, and educate myself, a little bit more about positional training and things like that. I've always been someone who I consume information.
Yeah.
I'm not an innovator of anything. Anything I ever did on the football field, I got an idea from somebody else.
Right.
And I think we're all pretty much that way. So once in a while we add a little bit of, a creative touch or something, but the innovation has already been done. So the third year I was there, I went up to the varsity staff, and the head coach had it set up so that I would handle the front 7 and McChesney would handle the DBs. So you don't have to be a genius to think that that's not really a good plan. Because if you're not coordinated with your front and your secondary, obviously there's going to be holes in the defense. So I didn't, he said, well, one of you two is going to have to, basically be the coordinator. So Wayne didn't want any part of it. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Right. So then I got back to the book, and what do you want to do? Like I was running his defense, but I put my own personal touch on it. For example, we were playing a 4-3. That was what he wanted to do. Basically cover 2 most of the time. So I changed that up a little bit, but I would do reductions, so if we're on the open side, I'd bring, the defensive tackle and down into the guard and tackle area. And then the outside backer, we'd give it a little split look or a stack look, and we'd stun off that. It was good. And then as the years went on, I was there for 12 years. And as the years went on, I developed more and more of a repertoire of things that I could throw at people.
So Chuck, you were the defensive coordinator early in your career, and you maintained that role throughout your coaching career at Borough?
At the Borough, I did, yes.
Wow. How old? Okay. Yeah. So you had a lot of years in as the defensive coordinator.
I did. But the biggest advantage of being at Freehold, we only had 4 coaches. So everybody had to coach a position on each side of the ball. And what I did, I told the head coach, I want to coach a different group every year.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 year I would coach D-line, 1 year I would coach linebackers, 1 year I would coach secondary, and I would coach offensive line, and I coached running backs. So I had a lot of experience, at every position on the field, so that, when I became a head coach, I was able to give people, good guidance on, how we wanted to go with a certain offensive group. I used to go up to the Rutgers camp, work up there for a week when Ed O'Neill was one of the assistants that ran the program up there. And you got a chance to hobnob with these college level coaches and assist them. And that's why I learned a ton of stuff doing that. That was great. And then after I got appointed head coach at Freehold Township, after the first season, the district paid for me to go down to the University of South Carolina because they were running a spread attack down there, and I wanted to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the 1985 season comes around. We knew we were going to be pretty good. We like one of the biggest games I remember is Shore Regional. Both teams were 7-0, and we shut them out. Wow. It was 20-0. I mean, Joe went off. Obviously, we were gonna score a lot of points, but they ran that wing T at the time, and it was kind of like bend but don't break. They would march down the field. They were good. They would march down the field, and they get to about the 20-yard line, the 15-yard line, and all of a sudden we're bringing the safeties up a little bit more, and we're stopping that offense.
Mm-hmm.
And we would take over, and then we would move. Joe would one snap, and he'd score a touchdown, and then
right. That's always nice.
We get back to. Oh, he was incredible.
And I watched him play. I remember when I was a young kid.
You guys, you remember when Saquon Barkley did that reverse hurdle over that guy? I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you ever saw the video. But there's one, a reaction of the bench and all those professional athletes. Like, oh my God! I don't know if you saw that, but there were a lot of those moments when Joe Henderson ran the football. I mean, he was so smooth and fast and elusive. We were playing Pinelands one time, and we were killing them. And we ran a dive play or a blast or something right up the middle. And the last guy was a safety, the free safety. And it was just him and Joe. And Joe, without missing a step, did something with his shoulders, and the kid just fell into his shoes. It was, yeah. And I remember saying to Stan, because Stan and I used to always be side by side on the sideline. I said, Stan, man, somebody's son.
Yeah.
Chuck, I think, Joe Henderson was such a talent, and he gets a full ride to Clemson, and he ends up playing there maybe his senior year. But I think a lot of people don't understand is that he was really undersized, right? He was not a big kid at all.
He was not a big kid, no. I mean, he was filled out, but he wasn't what you call big. Man, was he fast.
Oh, my God. Joe the Jet.
There for the longest, he was the second leading rusher at Clemson. He played behind Terry Allen, who had a great career in the NFL.
He had a great career.
Yeah.
And then, interestingly enough, my last year at Freehold Township, he was on my staff.
Oh, wow.
Joe Henderson.
Yeah. Wow.
And there were occasions where we were trying to demonstrate something about who we're getting ready for, and he would run the scout team.
Wow.
He still had it.
No, I can imagine.
He still had it. Yeah.
Okay, so Coach, 85 was your last year at Freehold Borough. And so tell us how, the thought of being a head coach came up, and how did that opportunity present itself? And,
right.
why did you decide to take it?
I'd been thinking about head coach opportunities for a couple years, prior to that. Mostly because I find in my life, I'm not a great assistant at anything, And I say that unashamedly. I want to run things.
Right.
Hopefully in the marriage, the long-term marriage that you and Deb, you've had this wonderful marriage. So you're a good assistant there. That's really where it counts.
When I come home, I'm the assistant.
Yeah.
And lovingly so. But anyway, I began to become very frustrated with what I saw as the deficiencies in the program. Our offense was like a Pop Warner offense. I mean, and I don't mean to do any damage to the Pop Warner reputation. I mean, it was so, like, if you have a running back like Joe Henderson, like, what's the first thing comes to your mind about how you're going to use him on offense? Like, where are you going to put him?
Yeah, wherever you want, number one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But put him back there 9 yards deep.
Put him in the eye. Yeah. Let him do that cutback. Let him run either way. Some bastardized thing that he ran where he was like,
you were in a double. I went and saw it. You were in a double tight T backfield, backfield where you would want.
Right, and then the guy in the middle would go in motion because they're always thinking that way he would fool the defense if they lined up one way or the other.
Yeah.
But anyway, and there were other things fundamental to the experience the kids were having that I would constantly say to myself, I would never do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we've been there, Coach. Coach Letts and I have been there.
Yeah.
I'd never do that. But so anyway, after that season, we went to the state final. There was friction between me and the head coach. All right. Because I never did anything that was unsound or disloyal, but like I would have my kids come down to my house in Lakewood and we'd watch film, the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he objected to that because, and I understand, like there are other kids that want to do it too. And I thought to myself, I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, why don't you do it?
Right.
But some of the kids still remember that too. Screen 8mm up on the wall, that kind of thing. But it got to the point where he wanted to let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get into the details of it because I don't know who's going to see this. So I'm just going to say that I knew at the time that the Freehold Township job was going to be open. And I knew who they had coming back,
mm-hmm.
On that team, because it wasn't just Vega. I had 5 offensive linemen that when I got in the huddle, I had to look up at.
Wow.
I was 6'2".
Wow. Freehold Township.
6'5", 6'4", 6'4", 6'5" in the tackle to tackle.
One thing I always remember about Freehold Township, they always have big linemen.
Yeah.
I'm like, these guys are big. Like,
yeah. And I often think, how you sit and think about like, oh, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. If I'd have known then what I knew when I left football coaching, we would have been state champs. There's no doubt in my mind. But when, you first go into the job, it's grab this, grab that. You're always a little bit behind yourself. The
mm-hmm.
schedule gets a little ahead of you. You're always catching up, especially when you're teaching full time.
Right.
It's a rough thing. And I was teaching in a high level academic program there, the international studies program. So there wasn't days off.
Right. And they don't fool around with your teaching in Freehold Regional.
No, they do not.
Teaching is it. Teaching.
Yep. In fact, Jim Hayden, who was the principal, and I had a lot of respect for that man, a lot of admiration, but he wasn't a sports guy. So his big thing to the community was, but not only is he a football coach, he's a great teacher.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
But the expectation was he got the job done. But it was okay. I had my system down by then.
Right.
So getting that job, was big for me. We ended up having a good year. One quick story: when we won our opener 33-0 at Wall, and then we played St. John Vianney and got out coached.
Mm-hmm.
We lost 5-3
because
we weren't doing they weren't making the right adjustments at the offense. Now at the time I had an offensive coordinator. I was running the defense, and I thought to myself, we got to be able to figure these things out, because we should not have lost a game to those guys. So third game we played Long Branch, who was undefeated that year and state champion, and they beat us 28-0. I mean, we weren't going to be on the field with them under those circumstances.
Right.
1994, we might have beat them.
Right.
So then we're facing Mattawan, also 3-0, coming into our place, and we're 1-2. Now everybody has these high expectations. And the same thing happened the year before. They were 2-7 with all these great players. They were playing a tougher schedule, I would say. So, because I have a lot of, Bob Grace, I have a lot of respect for. We used to go against him every year, and he was a good football coach, no doubt about it. You had to be ready when you played him.
Yeah.
So we're practicing. We're coming in from practice, and I had this kid, Mike Larissy, and he comes up. He said, "Coach," he says, "I don't understand. You guys are so chill about everything. I don't think he said chill, but we're not. What are you doing? It's almost like, can't you be mean to us so that we can get, But like we were all about the X's and O's and the preparation. We weren't thinking about the fact that we had to win a game in order to finish season or whatever the case. We just coached the way we always did. Now this is an example, I think, of how my experience as a youngster and my experience as a Marine gave me a grounded foundation that didn't let me worry about stuff like that. Like I never attached my ego to what my record was. I never thought to myself, oh my God, I knew I was doing a good job.
Right.
I know you guys knew that too, because from the conversations that Tom and I had. So anyway, we played Mattawan. They always had a good tailback. And this particular year was a kid named Mitter.
Yep. Craig Mitter.
and all during our preparation, you know, like I said, I was coaching the defensive side of the ball. You know, I would say, we got to swarm this kid, man. He'll break a tackle. We got to swarm, you know, which you teach him anyway. So I want him taken off the field. You know, I didn't mean to say it hurt anybody or anything.
Right.
I got a little lesson in me too.
That statement, yeah.
At one point in the third quarter, they literally were dragging him off the field. He was just so beat up, like his toes were dragging as one kid, one shoulder, one at the other. Look.
Yeah.
So we end up winning that game 28-14 and turned our whole season around. The only loss we had after that was to Red Bank Catholic, and that was like 12-6 or something like that. You know, that was a bit of a disappointment. Al Golden scored a touchdown.
Back then, only 4 teams got in the playoffs. That was
that's exactly right.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah. I remember the 4-team thing when we made the playoffs in Freehold. We played Manasquan first, and they were good. They always had a good team. And something you said in one of your podcasts the other day, I had a similar experience to, in that the first play of the game, and we're lined up in a 4-3, and I had this middle linebacker, Lionel Johnson, who was just a stud. He was able to read 2 gaps. You know what I mean? He wasn't gonna get fooled. And we ran a little stunt with the tackle and the Mike backer, where, you know, the defense tackle took A gap and he came up through B gap, and they didn't pick him up. Right. And they give the ball to Elliot Morgan, who was one of the great Morgan running backs in Manchester.
Yeah.
You know, blew him up. I mean, just stopped him in his tracks. Ooh, you could hear the whole stadium. Ooh, you know, it was great. And that set the tone, and we beat them 6-2.
Yep.
Yeah, I forget how they scored a safety, but they finished the game on our 5-yard line, 4th and 1, to get a first down.
Wow.
Okay. So we call timeout. We get the kids together, and I told them, I said, the only thing that can hurt us here is the option. Make sure you have your option stuff down, because of the way I played my goal line. And you and I have different visions about that, Tom, but like I always played strictly man-to-man on the goal line. For good reason. I figure if I have the tight end and he blocks, I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to help Phil on the run. You know?
Right.
So, but the option is tough to deal with, because that defensive end has to understand that he can't be blocked. He's going to have to get the quarterback.
It's the toughest goal line play.
Yeah. So he sheds, he comes across, the quarterback's running down the line, boom, he tackled, 4-yard loss, 2-yard loss, something like that. And we ended up winning the game.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was that a big memory. Yeah, the other one I wanted to talk about was when I was at Freehold Township. One of my most memorable games ended in a tie. The only tie I was ever involved with was before they had the overtime rules, and we're playing Freehold Borough at our place. Now that's always a big thing because of my association with Freehold Borough, and you know, so they're beating us 18-6 with 4 minutes to go in the game. And I'm standing on the sideline. It was one of those things, you know, probably Greg, you could, you know, empathize with this, where you feel like you're the only person on the field. You know, like all your assistants, you know, are away from you. And the Freehold crowd is singing the Na 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 song. You know, we were done. They punt, we get the ball on our own 5. So, you know, I want to win this game. So we had a running back that was pretty good, Phil Simpson. He was a good back. He was brought up in Lakewood. He was a tough kid, real tough kid. So we run a counter to him, and he runs like 30 yards, right? So, okay, clock's running down. We throw a pass out of bounds to Richie Johnson. And at the time, that my last couple of years, because of the personnel I had, the offense, we were running midline option, trap option. So we would run, our passing game was all off of that. So we run a play called, if we said 40, what the quarterback is going to do is take the snap, and then he's going to turn this way, fake the dive on the mesh, and then turn around this way, and run this way, and pick up the tailback for the pitch man. But we would throw a dump pass off that. It's like an RPO.
Right. Back then.
So yeah, it was pro 41 X dump. So we run the 41. Richie goes between the safety and the corner. They're playing cover 2. Kid delivers him the ball, and he runs 55 yards for a touchdown. During the play, one of my assistant coaches, a kid I love dearly, played for me at Freehold Borough. He went to college, came back, worked with me, passed away at a young age, he was a national treasure, this kid. Well, he's all pumped up and he's jumping up and down on the field because he sees, Richie scoring a touchdown, right? Ref throws a flag. So when the ref threw the flag, I knew what it was for, but I was convinced that it's still, the touchdown's going to count. That's a dead ball foul.
Right.
Because all the guy in my ear saying, "Oh, no, we're going to lose a touchdown." I said, "No, we're not. No, we're not." So it was, but the problem was a 15-yard penalty was enforced on the extra point.
Oh.
So he missed the extra point.
Right.
We had Richie Johnson was the kid who scored a touchdown was our kicker. But we didn't even try to kick from there. We tried to run a play and it didn't work. So now it's 18-12. So now the other coach is starting to panic a little bit, I think, So he comes out and he's just going to run the ball. He's going to try to bleed time off the clock. But we stuff him and we use our timeouts. We stuff him. Boom. They punt to us. We get the ball on our own 45. I run the same freaking play. Same freaking result.
Yeah. That's great.
Same coverage. Same
coverage. Yeah. We run the same play. Pro 41 X dump. So now here's the thing. Richie just catches these 2 touchdown passes. He also played D back for us. Kid weighed about 140 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He would bring it. After a game, that kid was totally flushed head to toe because he just gave everything. Kid, unbelievable heart. So he's our kicker, and he was, he didn't miss an extra point all year. So I said to myself, he's tired, and he had dinged his knee a little bit. And I gave consideration to calling timeout. But then I thought to myself, and I had this in the back of my head, oh, yeah, and so then if he misses, it's because I iced him.
Yeah.
I'm in the shower today even, and I think of that.
Yeah.
Because when he kicked the ball, it went, shoo, went way off. So I had no hope at all. So now it's 18-18. We kick off, and now Earl wants to win. So he's starting to throw the ball. Well, he throws 2 incomplete passes. On the third pass, we intercept the ball. Now there's like 10 seconds to go in the game. And this kid, Dave Mazer, is running, sort of running. He never carried a football before. And I'm thinking to myself, just pitch it to Richie.
Yeah.
Anyway, the game ended 18-18, but it's a great memory.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Chuck, so you were at Freehold Township for 8 years, and something that we really wanted to get into is we know that your first year was your best year record-wise, was 6-3. But then there were lean years and struggling to get the W's as time went on, and a lot went on there. And, similar situation to us at Allentown, where, we didn't have a winning season there. And, we had to focus on other things. And the kids they were successful. They got better. We developed a program and a culture that they loved. And we saw successes, but it didn't. And we saw successes individually on the field and in games, but a lot of times we didn't end up winning those games, because we were just outmatched. What were some of the things over the years that your culture, that developed in your program that the kids really loved? I remember, I want to share this. I first heard of you, because I worked with one of your players' moms. Okay. And her name was Connie Green. And his name was David. And I don't know if he had the same name, Green, or maybe it was a different last name, David Cohen or David Green. But anyway, she would tell us of how much he loved you and the pregame speeches that you gave, and that you were a veteran. And although there's that you weren't losing, that you weren't winning, the kids loved the program, and they loved you. So this is where I think we really connect, and I connected with you when I met you because we were going through the struggles at Allentown. So tell us about your program and what was. I remember reading about Camp Welsh. The kid said, your legendary summer camp.
I came to the conclusion after 2 years there that one of the things that would benefit our program if the kids had a chance to do something hard, and Freehold Township kids, were great in many ways, but they weren't real tough unless they were born that way. You know what I mean? They didn't grow up in a nice, soft environment.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you know what you mean.
Yeah.
We decided, well, I put it together that we were going to go to camp. So we went up to the Poconos for a week. When you could do that, you can't do it anymore. We got complete support, got transportation, the whole thing. Excuse me. So we would do 4 sessions a day. I would get the kids up at 6 o'clock. We would go just to do PT. We were just going to go do our conditioning in the morning. Then they would take a shower. They would go to breakfast. Then we'd have meeting for whatever we're going to do in practice today. We're going to go over in this meeting. I mean, we had them boom, boom, boom. It was just hardly any free time. So then we'd have an offensive session in the morning, and then it would reverse itself. We'd have lunch, and then we'd have a defensive meeting, and we'd talk about what we're going to do on defense. And then we'd have a defensive session. And then in the evening, we would just do special teams. Like, we would work on our punt game, all that other sort of thing. But the point was that it gave us a lot of time to work on fundamentals, because my belief was, you had asked me this before, like, the culture we wanted to build was one based on being fundamentally sound at everything. We might get beat, but we're going to be in the right place, and we're going to use the right technique.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And also to kind of develop a plan that would take advantage with whatever talent we had, we wanted to put in the right positions. And that's not always an easy thing. So when I first went over there, knowing we had Vega and a couple kids that could really fly on the outside, we went to a spread attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the father of one of my defensive backs coming to me and saying, and he was a great guy. I had a good relationship with this guy. We used to work out at the Y together. And he said to me, I don't think that's going to work, Chuck. He says, you got to have that fullback in there as a lead blocker and all that. And I said, listen, if I put a fullback in there, I'm going to bring another defensive player in there. Yep. I want to spread people out and give Scott more, opportunity to run in the creases. So interestingly enough, we're playing somebody I forget. And there was a guy named Ray, Freehold Township guy, who used to be a referee. And he was a very good referee. And I remember during one of the timeouts or something, he said to me, he says, Coach, he said, I think you're doing exactly the right thing with that kid. And he ended up being a 1,000-yard rusher, first one in Freehold Township history, because even though we were spread, we were going to run the ball and pass the ball when we had to. Now, our quarterback was Brian Gilbert, who went on, he walked on at Michigan State, realized he wasn't going to play, and then he went to Shippensburg and set all the passing records there, running the wing T. And Brian Gilbert was Saquon Barkley's coach in high school at Whitehall High School.
Wow.
No kidding.
So I still have a little bit of contact with him now and then, went to watch his team play. And
yeah.
Cool. So the camp developed out of the idea that that's something we don't want to miss out on. We want to toughen our kids up. And they had fun too. Like we would in the evening, we would sit around, we'd go around the pool. And then by that time we had established rosters for special teams, offense, defense. And I would just yell, all right, first offense, and everybody, they had to jump in the pool. Right. Count them up, and then, our punt team, and they'd jump in the pool. And, just like stuff like that. We had a really good time. But we wanted to be fundamentally sound, and we wanted to get a hell of a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So in the summer, I myself did this. My assistants were busy. They gave me a lot. I mean, I never had an assistant balk about going away to camp or anything. So in the summer, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, I would run weight training and agility sessions right at Freehold Township. And my kids were always in great shape, those that participated in it.
Right.
Some kids chose not to. We didn't, we would do whatever we could within our power to get them to go. But kids had jobs and stuff. You have to be sensitive to that to a certain extent. But I had probably 75% of them there on a regular basis. And we had a great weightlifting program that involved hang cleans and squats and bench press. And that's what we focused on. None of the bicep building, none of that stuff.
Right.
And then we did an agility program that I got from the University of Nebraska. It was just incredible. It was in tune with what was going to happen on the field. Not running 100-yard sprints, like bursts of activity and then a little rest and a burst of activity. It was I think at that particular time it was probably the epitome of what you should be doing with your kids to get them in shape.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We did a lot of cool things that way. But anyway, Camp Welsh was a big highlight, and I love going up there and doing that stuff too. And I ran out every practice before I left, because you're so busy up there, you don't want to sit down. Then we would make changes as we had to if we saw something we had to work on a little bit more.
Right.
So, I don't think I ever had a situation where I felt our kids weren't prepared to do the best that they could.
The best that they could.
But we were all about process, and I think I told you guys, if you go to every one of our weight sessions, you're a winner.
Right.
You win. If you go out there and give everything you have and don't leave anything on the field, you're a winner. I don't care what the scoreboard's. and that's why like we never got down on them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We never, you know, got sarcastic with them when something went wrong, because we all know what that felt like. You know, it was establishing a positive climate, making sure they understood football was important. With the community, I put out a newsletter every week, you know, like, and at that time, it was a Macintosh, you know, these little templates that really today look ridiculous, you know,
right.
But you know, I always had fun. I mean, people say, "How'd you coach for that long with you know those kind of losing records?" And I said, "Hey, you know what? It's not about the record all the time. It was a function and a part of my life that I felt contributed to my success later. So when I left football, I had with me skills that I could apply to the job I was doing as a teacher leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew that when I worked with teachers, they weren't going to put the score in the paper, you know. So, you know, I could really get into it, and coach the same way. There are fundamentals. We have to execute the fundamentals, and you know, we're all winners.
When I had met you and we were going through the Allentown years, Greg and I, you know, I recall, because, you know, as I previously mentioned, we coached against each other. Right. You know, and we had Stephen Michael Pitts, you know, a great Shore running back who got a scholarship to Penn State and ended up being their number one back, you know, at some point in his career. And he was a special talent. And obviously that gave us an edge in all of our games during his career. And, you know, and you told me something, you know, that I didn't grasp right away first. And you were prideful about it in regards to, hey, you know, well, you had Stephen Pitts. I'm like, yeah. So, well, you know, we forced you to punt 5 times in the first half in it was either 1989 or 1990. Right. And I'm like, yeah. That, you know, and it didn't sink in, you know, but then it did sink in. Like, I'm thinking like, you know, like, yes. And I can remember, you know, that game now, and that we were struggling, you know, to put offense together in the first half. I mean, you know, and as you know, and Greg and I have been through this, you know, we did, you know, initially in the game, you know, we might have done very well because, you know, we were outmatched, but we were ready, or maybe we were better conditioned, and we were very prepared, you know, S's and O's wise. And so we, you know, we gave teams fits in the beginning, but then as the game went on, you know, their superior talent, you know, or size or combination of that, you know, just overcame us. So I came to appreciate that statement from you. And yes, you know, there's a lot of successes like that within programs that kids like. I know that your kids probably that were involved that they look back at that and say, you know what, yeah, well, we didn't have a winning record, but you know what, we stopped Stephen Pitts. You know, we made South, you know, punt 5 times in the first half, and they had Stephen Pitts.
Yeah,
you know, that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and those are the kind of things that you sell to the kids too. You know, I mean, you know, because there was, I think it gets to the point where some of the kids that like maybe don't play as much or whatever, you know, they get to a point where they're a little bit like of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And a real quick story, my daughter, who was, I think, a freshman at Freehold Township when she did this, was one of my football managers. And she was the ball girl. Like she'd always walk around, you know, with 2 footballs like this. And a kid standing on the sideline, we had a turnover in a very close game. And this kid goes, well, here we go again. So my daughter turns on her heel and said, yeah, that's exactly why you don't play.
Yeah, true. I get it.
Megan did that. She
oh, yeah. No.
I think that listening to the stories that you're saying, and Tommy, even for me as a coach, I don't specifically remember a lot of individual plays, but I remember the other stuff. I remember the relationships with the kids. I remember doing the sand workouts. I remember doing all of our box workouts. I remember being in the weight room, going to camp. I don't really have, and I don't know if like I said, my Allentown days made me black out a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, I was young. I mean, I was a little, you know, I was a kid. I was 29 years old when I got that job. But my memories, and this is what I think is unique to high school. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong here. But I don't remember specific plays. I remember things outside of that, the relationships and the things we did, the little things we had between the kids and the coaches and each other, So those things I think in high school become extremely memorable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt about that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
I'm
I
trying to
think,
think of other situations where the process goals came in place. Oh, I wanted to, yeah, we played Lacey probably 90, 91, and they had Keith Elias.
Yep.
yep.
And I knew Keith because when I worked the Rutgers camp that year, I was working with the running backs coach, and he was one of the running backs. So we developed a rapport almost in that week. You know what I mean? Like he knew me, and we had a lot of good talks and stuff. So they come up to our place, and he's obviously the running back, right? And my kids, man, same thing. Came out in the first half, like I think we were losing 19-13 at the half, and the kids were amped. My kids were amped because they knew what Lacey had, and they knew that they were doing a good job. But then Lou, when we came out for the third quarter, decided that was enough of that, and he just kept feeding Elias the ball.
Yep.
He just wore us down. He ended up with 41 carries in that game.
Yeah.
Well,
Coach,
300 yards or something like that. I mean, we had no chance. Do you know that kid came up to me after the game and hugged me and said, "I'm sorry, Coach.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about
He
that."
was one of those. He was definitely that kind of kid.
Great kid.
Yeah. I remember Coach Letts. I think did you coach in the All Shore game when we played against him?
Yeah.
He single-handedly won that game. He was a stud.
Yeah, he was very good in that game. He was, good player. But like the old high school, at least high school, minimally high school adage goes, right? If you have a cannon, fire it.
Yeah, you have to.
Like why wouldn't you fire it unless you're in the 1985 state sectional finals? Coach Welsh, Joe Henderson is used as a decoy rather
13
than
touches.
than firing the cannon.
That's amazing.
If we had that Coach, kid, 40 carries.
Coach West, let me ask you a question. You had said that when you got the head job at Freehold Township, you ran the defense and you had a separate offensive coordinator. Was that your offense? Did you implement it and have him run it, or did he come? Were you okay with him running his offense?
No, it was my offense. When I got the job, the guy that was the offense coordinator before was a former head coach at Raritan. Emil something. You guys might, I don't remember.
Carlick.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Carlick.
Yeah.
Good man.
Yeah.
So he wanted to continue as offensive coordinator, and I just knew that could be a problem. I wanted to kind of get past what happened in the past.
Right.
And I didn't really like his offense. Like he would do things like triple backs, like three guys behind the quarterback, stuff like that, and I really, really wanted to experiment with that spread attack. So when I went the next off season, when I went down to South Carolina, I was given access to everything. And the offensive backfield coach or receivers coach sat with me for 3 hours.
Wow.
Going over how they ran their spread attack with, what routes they used and how they blocked it and all that. It was just one of the most rewarding experiences. They put me up in a hotel and gave me a car too.
That's awesome. Now, when you evaluating, talk, to younger coaches and coaches that want to be offense coordinators and stuff, how did you know you had the personnel? Like, did you evaluate your personnel that you were going to have the receivers and the quarterback and stuff? So you had them. So you knew, what if you didn't? What would your offense been?
Well, then it evolved actually over the years I was there, because I didn't always have that kind of personnel. Like I might have a quarterback that could spin the ball like that,
Right.
So we went to a vanilla I offense for a while, where we run the typical stuff, toss play, counter, belly play, and then bootlegs. We were almost all play action then because the kid really couldn't throw the ball that well.
Right.
And then we did that for a couple of years, and then we ended up we had a pretty good group. We had a big kid that came in as a freshman. His name was Mike Wannett, and I was involved in the summertime with the freshman program as well. And he told me, he says, I'm going to be a running back coach. Well, I'm looking at this kid. He's huge. He's a big boy. I said, no, Mike, I think you're going to be a tackle. He said, no, coach, I can run the ball. Well, he didn't. So I got a chance to watch him play and watch his feet and all that. I thought maybe he can. He ended up being our fullback, and that's when we installed the midline option, the trap option game.
So talk about the importance as a high school coach, especially having the mindset to change not your fundamentals and stuff and your beliefs, but change based on your offense, based on the personnel you have at the time. Because we've talked, Coach Letts and I have touched on this, how some guys are just, we're doing this and that's all we're doing, and they'll suffer, and put kids in positions that they can't be successful. Talk about how that evolved in your brain of, we got to be able to use the talent we have and adapt our offense that way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just seemed like coaching 101. Like,
right.
you can't adapt your kids to your system. Your system has to adapt to the kids you have.
Agreed.
And the thing a lot of people might miss is how you do that, how you evaluate those kids to see if you can, because you make mistakes. Like, I made a mistake with Mike. I mean, he ended up being 1,000-yard rusher his senior year. Running fullback in a trap option, because Larry Boyce was one of the best line coaches, I think, in the Shore area. And man, we were so tight on that. Boy, we just did so well on that. But if it's gonna be, you don't have any kid that stands out, we're gonna run something where it involves more, teamwork and not individual player. And then if we have a stud, we're gonna give the stud the ball. We're gonna fire that cannon.
One other thing. Was your offense adaptable enough to use the same terminology from the first year you were Township to when you went to the spread, or did you have to change your terminology and stuff like that?
That's a really good question. I definitely had to change the terminology, because obviously the two offenses, particularly those two eye offenses with the trap option or the regular eye, required, like I said, like the Pro 61 or Pro 41. Like, I didn't need that in the eye, really. We would just run to the hole and we'd number the hole.
Right.
But I needed this because it was not only direction, it was the type of read we were going to have. Like, we were going to mesh with the fullback, and then,
And how did it,
hours on that mesh?
I can imagine. That's the most important play in that offense.
Man. And we were so good at it. We were so good at it. When we played Freehold Borough that year, real quick, I knew the defensive coordinator there was a friend of mine. He was coaching when I was a D coordinator, and he was basically running my stuff, but with a few things that the head coach had suggested. And one of the things the head coach suggested was, if a team runs 4 wideouts, you play 0 coverage.
Yeah.
Okay. So I told my kids, I said, we're going to score a touchdown in this play. Okay. And I'm going to script it. It's going to be the 12th play I call. And I would take the tight end and the flanker and put them out. I said, get out as far as you can past the number.
Yep. My God, we did that a million times.
Tailback on the other side. So here they come. The field is wide open, right? And the quarterback, the plan for the quarterback was, when you check the front, if they're in the they have a middle backer and they have like a 2 technique over the guards, we're running the trap. If they do anything you're uncomfortable with, just run a belly and we'll see if we can break them. Well, of course, they line up in their base defense because they're playing cover 0.
Right.
And he called 61. I'll never forget it, man. Wanted to not get touched. It was a straight line.
Yep.
It was the best midline option play you ever saw.
And that's one of the things Tommy and I talk about often, is how some guys will not change anything. And that's what makes Tommy different on the defensive side of the ball, that he's willing to change not his fundamentals and his principles, but his scheme, against who we're playing. But I've seen so many, I'm sure you have in your career, and I know Tommy has, coaches that don't budge.
Right.
They're doing this no matter what you're doing. It to me, it makes no sense.
Well,
I mean,
it makes no sense because, what this really is, and I like describing it this way. This is a chess match with human pieces. It's a chess match with human pieces. So I never understood that rigidness. Like, what are you talking about? Like, look, that Chuck's example, this chess match, you're so outmatched in this chess match with what coverage you're using. Like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? So it's always been odd to me, because it is a chess match with human pieces. That's what it is.
And you play an 8-man front. One of the popular things in traditional offenses is to run what we call nub. they're going to take the tight end and they're going to put the tight end beside the tight end on the other side, or a tackle. They could move a tackle, whatever.
Like an unbalanced look.
Unbalanced butt. That's how it got the name nub. It's not unbalanced butt. So you don't have to do anything with your front, but you better do something about that slot back and understand that you got a weak side that's open now, because the team is going to either run an option to the weak side, or if you don't somehow take care of that guy, they're going to be able to run their off tackle or power, and you're short a man.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember, I spent a couple years as an assistant at Marlboro after I left, and I was a D coordinator my second year there. And I remember playing Corey Davies' team when he was at Howe. And Corey, of all the coaches that I've gone against, he's a very, very unique offensive mind. He's done a lot of things that were way ahead of their time. Yeah. And he's on the other side. I'm doing the defense, and he was running a lot of nub because we were an 8-man front. And typically what we would do is we would either walk off at the snap, we would walk off our player on the end, or we would have to adjust the safety and have the safety cheat up a little bit, which was dangerous against him because he liked to throw the ball.
Yeah.
So I remember the guy that was upstairs on our side was kind of like right next to their guy. Well, in separate little cubbies. But it got to the point where that's all we were doing. He was running nub, and I was running different ways of taking care of the nub. And one of the things that I did was I took our weak side backer was like a rover type thing, monster. Mm-hmm. I would say, okay, now this time I want you to run. Well, just line up on the center and read the play real quick. And if you can get to the open side, that would be great. So the guy told me that the assistant from Howe was saying, "Oh, he's just fucking with us now."
Yeah. Let me ask you one other thing, Coach.
Fun, but it is a chess. I will say that if I were to tell you what I could have done better, the one thing I could have done better was maybe use some of those players like Richie Johnson in a more creative way, like put him in the backfield. I mean, he was never a football player, so he didn't have great instincts, but he was a talented, hardworking kid. And to that extent, I was a little bit rigid. But when it came to, game planning, if we saw something we could do as a team, like that cover zero attack, we would do it.
Well, Coach Letts, I'm going to ask one more question, and then you could ask some questions. So, Coach, you went to your spread offense, and in our experience, and I think Tommy can add to this, we found out often that true spread teams that love to throw the ball didn't spend a lot of time in the run game, and they were deficient in the run game. Was that something that you experienced, or how were you able to have a spread offense and also a successful run game out of it?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think the first thing is you have figured out what you want to do, right? Mm-hmm. You know the kids, you know what talent you have and who's in what positions. So you got 3 good wideouts, let's say. You have a great running back. You have a big line. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think the first thing is you have to sell the kids on it. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to hear it at the kitchen table. That's bull. And we're lining up this way, but we're going to be a running team.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So the whole idea was we would adjust splits up front to create more seams even, or we would bring them down if we wanted to run outside with it. Danny George was good at that when he was at Red Bank. He could give you fits. When he had Eric McCoo, it was I was at Marlboro. And I wasn't the defense coordinator in my first year there, and his attack tore our defense apart. Like if he was going to run McCoo to the outside, the line would come down like this, the wideout would go way out. He would just have a natural seam. And the deficiency of their defense, the way they ran the 5-3, this is just my opinion, was that they did not use the secondary to fill lanes. I don't know if you don't do that in the wing tee. I'm not sure, but there was never any coaching given to disguising coverages or having your safety fill the alley. And, that's why that play was so wide open. They knew it. They took advantage of it. Mm-hmm. But to me, it was just a matter of selling it to the kids, making a decision that's based on what your talent has and what they can do. And the results were there, 6 wins and a 1,000-yard rusher, first one in Freehold Township history. So
I'm sorry. Now you're making me think again, Coach. Sorry, Coach Lat. Sorry.
Oh,
So, how intricate was your spread pass game? Because in the high school level, um, I would think being a spread team with those intricate pass games and reading coverages and kids finding the right spots, and did that take away from your run game preparation because it's so intricate in the spread?
No, we would coach the run game and the pass game generally separately and just flip the quarterbacks and whatever.
So you were a spread team that ran the ball first.
Right, correct.
Gotcha. Okay,
Now,
so we're definitely on the
the
same.
next 2 years,
Mhm.
we're a spread team that threw the ball a lot. Like when I had Brian Gilbert, I'll give you an example that can tell you how efficient we were passing the ball. I had a slot back. We did a lot of motion, and we did a little rub route,
Mhm.
and the slot back was always open against.
Right.
We were playing Wall Township, I think.
Cover two at Wall.
Huh?
Did they run cover two against that formation?
Probably cover two.
The only adjustment they made to the particular play we were running was they went to kind of like a wide tackle look, to get that kid
outside of that.
Still stop the run and maybe get outside.
Right.
But they couldn't stop the play. This kid had 203 yards receiving in a high school football game.
That's crazy.
203 yards, yeah.
Yeah. All right. But
Coach, one of the other things, too, was that because we ran so much motion, teams would have a tendency to get on their heels a little bit till we declared, which way we were going to go. But we would run like what we call rip Liz motion, where we would go right and then turn and run left and then run a choice route with the wide out. I did that against Manalapan, man. We just tore him up in the first half.
Right.
And, of course, Jimmy made his adjustments, and we kind of like ran out of steam on defense. And
Coach Rowe was
ended
good.
up beating us. But
very good coach.
We would run a lot of combination routes, depending on what the defense was in. So if they're playing, cover three, we might run a slide route with the motion back, and he would stop like at the line of scrimmage, and then the wide out would run that corner off. So somebody had to make sure they were there so we would either throw the ball to the slide route, depending on how they covered it. But a lot of times in a cover three, that guy coming up, the wide out going out, can do a stop route and be wide open.
Right.
Unless they adjust with their safety. We used to call it cover two stay, where the safety would just stay there. That was a lot of fun. And the great thing about that offense was when we were throwing the ball a lot, it was fun calling plays.
Right.
Because you could call anything. My play chart didn't necessarily designate things by area of the field or down a distance or anything like that. I just had the plays that I wanted to make sure we called, or if we did something special. It was just so much fun, man.
Coach, I am finding out, not knowing you that well, that we had a very similar situation just by mentioning your play. If you listened to a previous podcast, I never had my game script, second and medium, second. I never did that. It drove me. I always felt too locked in.
Yeah.
And I needed to feel the game.
I don't understand it too much because
on the high school level, I don't get it.
Yeah, because it doesn't help you organize yourself any better. Because like you said, you're locked into that now. I would script 15 plays. Right. And then after that, all the calls would be based on, whatever the defense did.
Right. What you saw.
Now we played Freehold Borough that day. We had that touchdown run from Mike Wannett, and we got the ball on our own 4-yard line. We went in 13-6, and I ran a quarterback sneak because they're playing the 4-3, and their tackle. Our line was good, so our tackles turn out. The center takes on the middle linebacker, and Randy Manier went like 40 yards for first down, and then we just ran belly. Ran belly the rest of the game. Mike Wannett took the ball, and we'd get 4 or 5 yards at a time just to milk the clock.
See, and
we ended up on the 5-yard line with a victory snap.
Yeah. I don't know. Teams just shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, that's like, they just shouldn't be able to do
Tommy's getting frustrated now because we're talking offense. He's going to lose his mind. Here we go.
What are you doing? I mean, not for anything, in high school football, I understand with the option and, and stuff like that. But generally speaking, dive is the easiest place to stop. You know what I mean? It's like, so, right. Anybody be taken off guard, once in a while. But if you're running it repeatedly, that's where it becomes like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing? And generally what they're doing is, that their kids are probably coming up field. They're probably, so it's not so much that, it's not so much the front that's called for the most
It's
part.
the fundamentals. It's technique.
It's the fundamentals that they're kind of coming up field, and it's like, hey, if they keep coming up, we're getting to the middle backer, and hey, it's goodbye. And of course their coverage is not synced in with what's going on. So whatever.
I love when you get like this, man.
Hey, it's just very frustrating. But anyway,
Coach Welsh, he can't handle two offensive guys, saying that with one belly down the field. He's losing it over there.
No, listen, the one thing I do appreciate is the fact that both of you guys served as a defensive coordinator. Chuck, you served longer, and you were a D guy, but Greg did too. But I think that guys that haven't, or if they look at spread offenses, obviously, as Chuck was saying, when you got a great quarterback and you're running spread, you can throw the ball. But generally speaking, there's just so many coaches, whether their quarterback is really good or not, they don't understand the bind that you put the defense in when you spread the ball in regards to running the ball. They don't understand that. Like if you're spread to the point where there's one linebacker, fellas, guess what? There's one linebacker. A lot of things can happen. He could slip. He could make the wrong read. Okay, you could definitely get a nice chip block off on him. You know what I mean? There's one guy there. One. Like why wouldn't you run the ball to death? You know what I mean?
As an offensive coordinator, when I was calling the plays, I think when you're a defensive coach first, you carry with you a wealth of information about what can cause you a problem.
That's it.
And you better have a plan. Like I remember when I was at Freehold Borough, played Freehold Township at our place, and they came out with something they had never done all year, which was 2 tight ends. Now that was smart because when you're playing a 7-man front and you have 2 tight ends, you got to play base. You can't do the things the reductions and the things that I used to like to do with that.
And you're widening.
It caused a little bit of a problem. So what we ended up doing was going basically to a 6-man front because they couldn't throw the ball.
Incredible.
But and I think it works the other way too. If you're an offensive coach, you probably could, be a pretty good defensive coach, knowing what defenses are going to try to do to stop you.
Absolutely, especially coverage wise.
Yeah.
So as we're winding down here, this was just a wonderful time. There was a topic that I wanted to to touch on because I think it would be interesting to some people that are listening. And the three of us have unique experience. The two of you more so than me because it was different. We all coached one of our kids on our team. So the three of us did. So it was a little bit different from me because my daughter Abby being the place kicker, the kickers went off and did their own thing. You know what I mean? They went and did their own practice. So although she was there and she was there I didn't really coach her. You know what I mean? But the two of you, Chuck with your son Mike, who's a tight end, offensive lineman, and or tight end and defensive lineman, and Greg with Luke coaching him at New Egypt, him being a center and a defensive end. You know what I mean? You two were on the practice field with them. So I was just curious, what type of experience was that from you, and any tips that you might give to fellas that might be coming into that same situation.
Coach Welsh, take that, and then I'll piggyback you.
It was a great experience. Like my son was after me from the time he was maybe in 5th or 6th grade to play Pop Warner football in Lakewood, and I always was of the mindset, right or wrong, that these guys don't know how to coach. Like they're going to make men out of them and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the problem is Lakewood had some great success. They won championships and this and that. So they all thought they were doing a good job.
Yeah.
So I finally, my wife and I gave in when he was like in 7th or 8th grade. And I was running my 4-night-a-week conditioning program. So I didn't get a chance to go to too many of the practices. So I get home one day and my wife says to me, Chuck, that something's not right. That you got to come to this practice. There's stuff going on there that just doesn't look safe. So I said, all right. So on Wednesday night was my night off. So I went to watch practice. I watched it for 10 minutes, went out on the field, took my kid and took him to the sidelines.
Yeah.
Wow.
Said, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I made a big stink about it because they didn't want to give me my money back, But then they decided, they did a little research on me. They talked to Bernie Coleman about who's this guy Welsh? Who's this guy?
Right.
He said, I'll tell you what, he's pretty hard-nosed. So but they were running a drill where there were two lines of kids facing each other, 15 yards apart, and they would just run into each other. No technique, no teaching technique, no technique, no soft tackle, nothing like that. And my son was, not really a street kid, and a lot of these kids were, and they kept getting behind the other guy in line. So they didn't have to run against these. And all the guys running at you were the veterans.
Right.
Some of the best players they had. So Mike is catching all these things, and he's got bruises up and down his arms because nobody's teaching him anything. And I said, that's it. That's the end of that. So then he went to Lakewood High School and he played as a freshman and he was pretty good. He was playing center and he was pretty good. I looked at tape of him and stuff like that. I didn't get to go to too many games. So his sophomore year, same thing. He's playing varsity football now. He's doing okay. So he came home to us, I guess after his 10th grade year was over, the season was over. And he said, Dad, Mom, I want to play college football. All right. I said, Mike, are you sure? And he goes, yeah, I really want to play college football.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, so you want me to help you? And he goes, yeah. So anyway, that led to this whole training thing where we worked out together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That kid, when his senior year came, he was a stud. He was 6'5", 235 pounds. I mean, if he was a step faster, that kid would have got a D1 offer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He had great hands and he was a great blocker.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that if a coach had taken him and talked him into being a tackle and put a little more weight on him, he would have been great at that. But anyway, the thing about it is that I knew he came to our school junior year. We moved out of Lakewood. We came here to Howe. And at the time, the kids in this development were going to Howe High School. So I, wrote a letter to the superintendent and asked if I could take him to Freehold Township. So he said yes. So because you're paying the same taxes.
Well, that was pretty simple.
Yeah. So now I don't miss any games and I get to work with my kid. And the tough part of it is there always is this aura of suspicion about favoritism, and that you're going to favor your kid. And then there's the other thing, there's a reaction of a lot of people to be too hard on the kid so you can prove that you're not being
right.
I can't believe, Chuck, that you favored your 6'5" kid. You know what I mean? Like,
that's my
come
point.
on, Chuck.
Who never missed a weight training session,
right.
Who was a vocal leader on the team, who could play well, with the kids that we had there. And in every way was like a remarkable person to have, on your team. He's a positive influence on people.
Mm-hmm.
And if he ever dropped a pass or something, you hear people booing him, And Debbie actually put up with more of that than I did.
Right.
I didn't have rabbit ears.
In the stands.
It was brutal. His senior year, it wasn't because of him, like because he was still doing the same things. But like we just didn't have, we had less talent than even usual. And, people like yell things out and God bless her for not, reacting differently. But in that way, it was kind of hurtful, that bothered me a little bit. I mean, people attacked my integrity and it was pretty easy to make the decision at that point that I wasn't going to do it anymore.
Right.
If that's the way you feel about it, I'm not going to do it. So that was that.
Yeah.
Kid ended up going to Fordham and, had a good time up there. And
good.
That's all she wrote. He was second team All Shore too. He played the All Shore game with Eddie Conti.
Oh.
And that was the biggest victory Monmouth County ever had. I think 36-0, 33-0, something like that.
What year was that, Coach?
That was the game of '94.
Right, the game
summer of '94.
Yeah,
that was Eddie.
But I remember I would go to the practices, check it out. And we're driving home one day. They had him at Ocean Township because George Conti was the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
great guy, loved him.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, Mike, what's going on out on the field? He says, I'll tell you the truth, Dad. I'm not used to somebody throwing the ball that hard. So, I got to get my timing down a little bit better because we had a kid who was just, like I said, like often. If he wasn't wide open, it was broken.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a great experience, seeing him, be able to play in that game and make a difference. Because every time they ran the ball, like, it was always to the tight end side, and they were getting 5-6 yards at a time. And I just watched him. Right. And I'm telling you, he was cleaning people up.
That's awesome.
One kid got up and smacked his helmet because he was so frustrated, like he couldn't get off the block.
That's a great feeling. Yeah,
that's awesome seeing your child do that.
Oh yeah,
and doing it and doing it the right way. Not being a cheap shot and not doing. But I had a similar experience. I mean, my oldest son played soccer. He was a good soccer player, so I really
very good.
I didn't have too much involvement in that. But I never wanted to coach Pop Warner. I rarely went to the practices. And here's why. I remember we finally let Luke play Pop Warner when he was young. So he was probably, I don't know, 10, 11, something like that. And I always had this issue, Coach, like you, that I just the Pop Warner coaches just rubbed me the wrong way all the time. And, sometimes I felt like I thought I was better than, but it wasn't, because I wasn't that way. I was just witnessing what I was witnessing. And I was like, this can't be.
Right.
And I remember the first practice, his first practice as a Pop Warner player, I went early, and I'm watching this younger group practice. Same exact drill. Line the kids up 10 yards away from each other. Half the group is running the ball. Half the group has to tackle. This is day one of practice. You see, like, the kids that don't want to do it, they're just hiding in the back.
Yes.
They get up to I'm watching these kids full speed, boom, just full speed. And I'm losing my mom, starting to feel it now. Now I'm feeling rage. And there was no words of encouragement. If a kid didn't make a tackle, it was get up, do it again. It was nothing. There was no teaching going on. And I remember the last kid in line was a smaller kid. And they had this kid run at him. He gets run over. Well, they just tell the kid get up. And then they put a bigger kid to run against him, and he got run over again. That was the first time in my life, and I've been to so many practices and games of my kids. That was the first time in my life I literally called the Pop Warner head guy. And I said, I just sat here and witnessed this. I said, this better change or else there's going to be a problem. And I said, that wasn't my son's coach, but just witnessing it, I was like, this kid, So he didn't. I said, my son's never playing for that coach. So he never did, which was good. But so I went to his games, and I was just a spectator. I never wanted to coach Pop Warner. I didn't want to get involved in that stuff. And I just watched it off to the side, like, usually coaches do when they're watching their kids. We're off to the side, not listening to the BS that's going on. So Luke became a freshman, was a starter as a lineman at New Egypt. And right before his junior year, he asked Coach Letson and I to coach. So obviously we did it. So now moving forward, all the kids that he played with, I knew them all. Like, they were all little kids, like, grew up in New Egypt, and they'd be over the house. We'd all be together, and I knew a majority of the parents. But one of the first thing I said to Luke, was that before we even start practice, I'm like, if I do this, when I am on the field, I'm your coach, and I'm going to coach you just like I coach everyone else. And he was, Luke had always been around it. Like Tommy can attest to this. He was around since he could walk.
Okay.
So he saw the way we coached, our interactions with the players and all that stuff. So there was never any of that. I coached him because I was the offensive line coach. So I was coaching him every day. But Luke was a smart football player who, by growing up as my son, knew what I would, how things were going to be done. There was he didn't open his mouth. Like, he would every once in a while make a little comment, and then I would be like, I'd give him the look and he would stop. But that was a great experience coaching, and Coach Letson and my wife were the ones that said, do it. Because I was like coming from Colts Neck, driving to New Egypt. It was, that was annoying, but it was a very rewarding seeing him play, just because watching him from a young, and I'm sure, Coach lets you share this too, just watching him grow and become the person they're going to be. Because in high school, my belief is by their junior year, they're pretty much the person they're going to be, for the rest of their life. By their junior year, sophomore year, they're could be childish and doing stupid childish things, but by junior year, they're pretty much, where your child is gonna be headed.
And
But
I'm going to take some credit for probably one of the highlights of Luke's career, which came on defense.
You got to put that clip
and
up.
and because he was coached in such a way that he stayed in his pass rush lane, and because of that, he was opportunistic when a pass was tipped, and he was in the right spot because he stayed in his lane, and he ended up intercepting the ball, and ran for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And that was some
Nice.
sight to see on our sideline.
Yeah.
We watch him go down
You
as
had
big
a
as he was.
you had a text on.
We had a Texan,
Yep.
and he did it, because he's that type of guy.
Yeah.
He does it the way he's coached to do it.
Yeah.
He didn't do his own thing. If he did his own thing, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He did it how he was coached to do, and it was right there for him.
Well, I remember at the end of the year banquet speech I had to give about him because he won the offensive lineman of the year. I brought it up towards the end that was one of my most memorable high school football experiences as a parent. And I remember saying what you just said. You were doing what you coached to do. You were in the right place at the right time, and that's what happens when you do the right thing.
Yeah.
So, it was a great experience coaching Luke, and I wish I coached, Cody too, but it was just a different time. I was a head coach then, and it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was great experience.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I'll just briefly say, because we're going to touch on it in another podcast when Abby comes on about coaching her, that it was obviously unexpected. It just started as a joke. She wanted to do it as a joke to get me flustered, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to come out for the football team and all this stuff. But then, she recognized that she was pretty good, and then, getting better. So, it was obviously, it was unique, her, being a female place kicker.
Of course.
It brought a lot of attention to our program, and not only the fact that she, initially was on the team, because, her junior year, her first year, she was the second string kicker and got her first kicks in, and so, and so people, it was a little bit of a stir. But then when she won the job as a senior and actually was one of the top kickers in the area, then it really kind of zoned in on us. And, but yeah, I mean, a little bit different in regards to, being concerned for her.
Right. Of course.
She laughs about it, because we talked about kickoffs. She wasn't our place kicker for kickoffs. Volpe was, Volpe was our, but we talked about it once in a while, if she would do it, but I'm like, I didn't want her to do it, because what is she gonna, she'll hear this and she'll say that, that's ridiculous. I would have been fine. But I was concerned for her safety, depending, but she wasn't, of course, because she's that type of kid.
Well, here's why, and I 100% agree with you, and that's why we decide she's not doing the kickoffs, because there are other people that the culture of their program would just naturally go after the girl kicker.
They would,
and that blows my mind. And I'm gonna my last comments are gonna be that time, Tom, when I forget it. It was a reporter from the Asbury Park Press when she was on the team, and he looked at me like, "Is that causing problems?"
Yeah.
And I looked at him like, "Why would it cause problems?" And I said, "My kids know the culture of our program, and I think that says a lot, about building culture and being role models for young men."
For sure. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, just want to have some closing comments. That this was just a wonderful time for me, being able to talk to two of the best friends that I have in this world. And, and Chuck, hearing about your career, everything, your life. I mean, we could have a number of different podcasts on different sections of your life. And it's always such a gift, when I'm able to hear you describe the experiences that you had, and also knowing, how much that you have been a mentor, to so many people in your life, me as well, and kids and other teachers, and, part, that has nothing to do with this podcast is that, Chuck, for many years after he retired, did fill in administrative jobs, on a temporary basis, and was able to mentor young teachers. And that was a very valuable experience for him and for them. I mean, they just loved him. So this was awesome. And I know a lot of people are really going to enjoy this podcast, but it was great, fellas. I just wanted to say that in closing for my remarks.
Yes, Coach Welsh, we really appreciate your time today and sharing your experiences. And it was awesome to get to hear about your life. And I was remiss, and I want to thank you for your service, in the military, and the respect I have for the military and law enforcement in general. And obviously, speaking to you in depth, the most I've ever spoken to you, I understand why you are a mentor to Tom and someone he speaks highly about all the time. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate that. And this was extremely enjoyable for me as well. And I appreciate you guys too. And I've enjoyed these podcasts, and it's just it's a privilege to be a part of it. You don't really get often an opportunity to sit down and do this for a couple hours and, interact with each other about things that we all love.
Yeah, incredible. And I would love to do another podcast on your spread offense, Coach. I want to see what you do. I want to see your stuff.
Man.
I want to see your stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Right,
we have to do a thing where you share your screen. And
we are working on that.
We're still working on that.
Yes.
The technical difficulties
we are definitely going to do that. I think that people do have an interest in that, and in doing this, and watching a lot of Instagram accounts and things like that. I mean, it's wonderful. Guys do so many different things, and there's so much out there now that I mean, guys are trying to sell their stuff, and which is great, and I hope they have success at it. But with younger guys, I just think it's so important that there's like Chuck said, the innovation you can make. The innovation's already been done. And you can tweak it, which is what I did with my defense. So I made my defense my own by tweaking it. And I just think that that's a really good message for younger guys, learn the basics and then make it your own, but this was a great podcast. And
one other thing, just to touch on that again, what our belief is that the X's and O's come last. It's the building a culture and a program. And the fundamentals and the techniques are more important than the X's and O's, because we can sit here and sell offensive and defensive game plans and all that stuff. But in high school, you have to build the foundation before any of that matters.
And they have to believe.
True.
They have to believe. And even when, like you mentioned, Greg, when we know we're not going to win this game, but our kids believe it, they believe it. And we believe that they're going to be competitive, and so we're not going to check out. We're not going to be looking at our phone. Not that that was a thing back then, because it wasn't, right? But we're going to be all in, and we're going to be there for them because it's their life. It's their experience, and we've already went through it, and we'd be cheating them if we didn't do our job, right?
I always believe that coaches, some cosmic way, should all have had to been in the situations we were as coaches where you're struggling.
You're right.
You become so much better of a coach when you have to struggle, So I always give a lot of credit to the guys that took, subpar teams and made them successful than the guys that walked into a program that was already established in a traditional powerhouse and just carried it on, because you don't have to think as much when you know that no matter what you're putting on the field, your talent is better than their talent. You're going to win.
Right. I'm going to finish with one quote, and that is that you don't always lose because you do everything wrong, and you don't always win because you do everything right.
Very true.
So you got to be into the system. You got to be into the, like you said, the fundamentals.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So thanks very much, guys. It was a great episode, and and for our audience, we'll get this up as soon as we can, and we'll be looking forward to episode 6. All right, take care, guys.
Great. Okay,
thank you, Coach. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Coach Welsh.
Thank you, Coach.